Hello, my name is Miss Jones, and I teach elementary school math. Welcome to my channel, Miss Math Jones. Now, today we're working on third grade, Eureka, Module 4, Lesson 4 homework. The objective for the homework is to interpret area models for rectangular arrays. Let's get started. Okay, let's take a look at number 1. Says find the area of each rectangular array, label the side lengths of the matching area model, and write a multiplication equation for each area model. Okay, so on one side we have rectangular arrays, and then on the other side we have area models. So for the rectangular arrays, we're just going to count the actual units to figure out the area. And for the area models, what we're going to do is use our area formula of length times width to figure out the total area in square units. Now, they match. So the square units are going to be the same, but we just solve them different ways. So for letter A, let's just go ahead and count the squares to figure out the total square units, which would give us the area. All right, so we're going to start counting for letter A. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we counted 6 square units. So we're going to write a 6 in this blank. Now let's take a look at the area model. So it shows us that on the length side, the length is 3 units. And on the width side, the width is 2 units. And they've filled out part of our equation for us. So we have our length at 3 units, and that's our length there. So that means that all we have to do is fill out our width, right, which is 2 units. And so our equation is 3 times 2. And 3 times 2 is 6. See, again, the rectangular array and the area model, they match, okay? It's just that you solve them in different ways. Now let's take a look at letter B. It's a rectangular array, so we're going to count the square units to solve for the total area. Let's go ahead and start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I haven't finished counting, but I noticed that my width is 5 units, and I'm going to keep that in mind for when I have to label my area model. So I'm going to keep counting. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's a total of 10 square units. So I'm going to write a 10 in that blank. Now notice I already labeled my width as 5 units because when I was counting, I saw that it was 5 square units wide. So I went ahead and labeled my width as 5 units. Now let's look at our length because we can see it, right? But let's just make sure to label it. So I'm going to use my rectangular array to count my square units for my length. So we have 1, 2. So that means that the length of this rectangle or rectangular array is 2 units. So I'm going to label my length as 2 units. So that means that my equation is 2 units times 5 units. And again, they match, so we should already know that 2 times 5 is 10. Remember, the rectangular arrays match the area models. So the total area are going to be the exact same for the ones that are right next to each other. Notice A is the same straight across, B is the same straight across. Now, if you need to go ahead and pause the video so that you can label everything and write everything down, go ahead and do so now. Now, let's look at C and D. Now, C and D are basically the same. We're going to count the squares in our rectangular array first, and then go ahead and use the squares to label the area models. Okay, let's look at C first. Let's go ahead and start counting those squares. 1, 2, 3. So that means that my length is 3 units. I'm going to go ahead and label it 3 units. All right, let's keep counting. And go ahead and label our width. Okay, so I label my length and I'm going to count to label my width. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that my rectangle is 4 units wide. All right, so keep counting. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So just counting the squares, I know that my rectangle is 12 square units in area. So I'm going to write a 12 there. Now I used my squares to figure out my length and my width. So I can go ahead and write my numbers in my equation. So that's going to be 3 units times 4 units. And I have my answer of 12. All right, let's move on to D. So let's go ahead and start with my length. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means my length is 4 units. Go ahead and label that. Now let's go ahead and count our square units to figure out our width. So starting at the top, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's 4 units wide, which means this is a square. It's a true square because all of the sides are the same length. All right, now I'm going to continue counting inside of my square using just the square units so that I can go ahead and determine my total. So I stopped at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, so my total is 16 square units for this square, which means I know that when I multiply 4 times 4, then I'm going to get the same answer of 16. But let's go ahead and fill in these blanks. So, all Our length is 4 units times our width of 4 units. So we have the equation 4 times 4, and we use our square units that we counted to help us with the answer, which is 16 square units. Now, if you need to go ahead and pause the video, do so now so that you can write everything in to make sure that your homework is correct and complete. Now let's look at number 2. Number 2 says, Jillian arranges square pattern blocks into a 7 by 4 array. So when we're talking about area, they're going to say a number by another number. That's another way of saying 7 times 4. 7 by 4 is another way of saying 7 times 4. The length is 7, the width is 4. Okay? Then it says, draw Jillian's array on the grid below. How many square units are in Jillian's rectangular array? So 7 is the length, 4 is the width. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you need to go ahead and write your numbers in those little squares all the way down till you get to 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is our length. And 4 is our width. So let's go ahead and count 4 across the top for our width. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, it says that she arranges square pattern blocks into a 7 by 4 array. So that's 7 length by 4 width. And we are supposed to draw Jillian's array on the grid below. So I'm going to shade in a square that's 7 by 4. So write your numbers for the length on the side and the width across the top, and then shade in that array. Now, it says how many square units are in Jillian's rectangular array. Now, remember, the area is length times width. And we said our length was 7 and our width was 4. So our equation is 7 times 4. Now, you could just count the squares to get your answer, or if you know what 7 times 4 is, then you'll have your answer that way. And 7 times 4 is 28. So written out as a complete sentence, there are 28 square units in Jillian's array. Now you may need to pause the video to go ahead and write everything down. Make sure you have your array labeled. Make sure you shade in the rectangle. Have your equation on your paper and your sentence. So go ahead and pause the video now so that everything's on your paper. Let's look at B. It says label the side lengths of Jillian's array from part A on the rectangle below. Then write a multiplication sentence to represent the area of the rectangle. Well, if you already did it for A, you don't necessarily need to redo it for B, but you can. All right, so for B, remember our length was 7 units, so you just write 7 units on this side. And our width was 4 units. So you just write 4 units across the top. So the side length is 7 and the top width is 4. And our equation for area, or our formula for area, is length times width. Okay. and we're going to write it in as 7 times 4 equals 28, just like we did for A. So right now, you're just writing everything down, filling it in just to make sure that B is complete. But if you did all of this for A, then that's fine. Now you may want to pause the video to make sure that B is completely filled in. Go ahead and do that now. Let's look at number 3, which is the last question of our homework. And it says Fiona draws a 24 square centimeter rectangle. Gregory draws a 24 square inch rectangle. Whose rectangle is larger in area? How do you know? So Fiona draws a 24 square centimeter rectangle. Gregory draws a 24 square inch rectangle. So the 24, that measurement's the same, but the unit of measurement is different. Fiona's is in centimeters and Gregory's is in inches. So first of all, we have to see if there's a difference between centimeters and inches. Okay, so on the screen right now is a 1 square centimeter unit on one side and a 1 square inch unit on the other side. So now you can really see the difference between a square centimeter and a square inch. Now, Fiona used square centimeters. She used the little one. And Gregory used the big one, inches. Whose rectangle should be larger? Gregory's, of course, because Gregory used a larger unit of measurement. Gregory used inches. So, your sentence to answer the question should say, Gregory's rectangle is bigger because an inch is bigger than a centimeter, as you can see. Now, if you need to go ahead and pause the video to write out this sentence, and you could even sketch out a little picture showing the size difference between a centimeter square and an inch square. So if you need to pause the video to do that, go ahead and do that now. And that was the last question of your lesson 4 homework, which means your lesson 4 homework is complete. As always, I hope this video has helped you complete your homework correctly, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. So I will see you next time. Bye.